What's up, sports fans? Welcome to another edition of the DC Sports Huddle. As always, sponsored by MGM National Harbor. It's time to change the game at BetMGM Sports. A little bit of a reshuffle of the deck here. Rob Woodfork here at the controls, while Dave Johnson is on the beach somewhere, and kind of looks like Dave and George are on the beach right now. George Wallace out at Washington Commanders, whatever they're calling that facility now. Dave
from the
Preston
beach,
getting his car fixed because
an undisclosed
at an undisclosed
safety
location in Virginia.
Yep.
The address scrolling across your screen now, and one Jay Brooks, who is joining us. Been a while, Jay, and of course you can hear him on WTOP on Sundays, and he tends to rant in our newsletter that comes right to your email inbox at the end of the week. Thursdays or Fridays, it depends on what I'm feeling like. But right now I'm feeling like talking about the 53-man roster for the Washington Commanders. They had the cut down day on Tuesday, and there were some surprises there. I mean, you have five tight ends, five safeties. You cut Jarrett Patterson, who I thought was one of the more inspirational tales from 2021. You need some depth at that position with everything that happened with Brian Robinson over the weekend. George Wallace, you are there. What's kind of the vibe there at Commanders Park?
Well, none of the players that they released yesterday got picked up. So they did by any other team. So they did get most of the guys back on practice squad. And that was just announced, including Jarrett Patterson, to your point. Troy Apke also coming back on the practice squad here in Ashburn. So, Patterson was kind of one of those guys on the bubble. I see your point. I thought maybe they would keep extra just because of the Robinson situation. But they're going to stick with what they've got right now, and they're going to go with Gibson and McKissick. And hopefully Robinson's situation is not going to be a long-term one. We'll see. He met with the doctors yesterday. At the time we're doing this, we haven't heard from Ron yet. We'll hear from him after practice to see what the doctors said and what the prognosis could be. Maybe it'll be a shorter time frame than they thought it would be. So that would be positive news. On the field just now, though, we did just see Cam Pearl, one of the safeties, in a sling. He did practice yesterday. That was not around yesterday. So that's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that. That's kind of some big news there, as one of your guys that you're counting on in that defensive secondary all of a sudden in a sling a few days before the opener. So lots of moving parts as always. Look, the key is going to be injuries, as it always is with anybody in the NFL, and especially this team. So I think it's going to be kind of a work in progress still these next couple of weeks to kind of get that roster where they want it to be. And we'll see what the coach has to say.
Yeah, and there's been a flurry of activity today. This is, again, being recorded on Wednesday. So a lot of flurry of activity. People are active on the waiver wire and everything. I think two positions that they have to upgrade, and that I'm so surprised that they didn't really fully and properly address in free agency back in March, is the linebacker position. Like, I mean, they are really thin at that area. And then you cut Khaleke Hudson. So, I mean, they're thin from a depth standpoint, let alone from a quality standpoint. And there's one interesting trade that I think that they could make that could solve problems for not just their team, but another team. Daron Payne, we talked about this, and this storyline kind of went away. Daron Payne, last year of his contract, playing on the fifth-year option, probably not going to be back because of money reasons. Why not flip him to Chicago and see if you can't get Roquan Smith? I mean, that solves two problems. You know, the Bears need some help up front. Washington needs a linebacker. What do you think of that, Jay Brooks?
You stole my thunder, because the linebacker position was the one that I know they needed a lot of help. Now, they did get Hudson back on the practice squad, which is nice to see. 23 of the defensive players, 27 offensive players of the initial 53. They had to add a little bit of depth. That's the big thing. Depth, linebacker, but to the rescue, Rashad Wildgoose, out of nowhere from the 49ers, comes over with Tariq Castro Fields of the Jets. So I'm happy to see a little bit of depth. It's depth. That's what I'm looking for, because the defense right now just looks like it's going to get torched. The front looks pretty good. They need some backups, but we'll see what happens. We got a few days until the opener against the Jaguars, where I am predicting, because I might not be on this show much longer or in the next couple of weeks, that the Jags are going to eke by Washington 21-20. Because week one is week one. You never know what you're going to get. And I think you'll probably then go into the Lions game with a chance to beat Detroit. You needed to win both of them, because I've been listening to George talk about it. You can't start 0-2 and have anything. Must win. I listen. I hear you. I understand. But that week one, I just think the Jags, they lost 17 in a row on the road, but there's a chance. So, again, linebacker, I'm glad to see that Hudson came back. There's still plenty of time to see some moves come and see what they can do to the defense. The offense looks okay. You got too many wide receivers. You got a lot of tight ends. Running back, I'm glad to see Patterson back on the practice squad as well. Maybe he does make an appearance this season. And Brian Robinson, I'm glad he's back. I know I'm rambling, but talking here at my day gig, a lot of the doctors are just like, it's a miracle that the bullet didn't do more damage to the knee. So it's either going to be a nice feel-good story for Washington, or sadly, it'll just be another chapter in a long, boring book.
I love Jay's approach to, I'm not on the huddle often, so I'm going to be like the guy at the end of the bench, and I'm just going to start jacking up threes here. That is great. Dave Preston.
We got to get predictions. Jay, what about prediction for week 17, that game against the Cowboys? Give me a score.
How about that week 18 game where they retire Sonny's jersey?
That's what I meant, yeah. By the way, real quick, before Dave goes, real quick, I do think, and Ron said yesterday a number of times, he says they're not done. And I don't think they are done. There's still a couple weeks left. I think you're going to see something, maybe to Rob's point about a trade or something like that. But I don't think they are done with this roster, because there's still some holes going in. So it could be an interesting week or so before they get settled on what they want.
What's your impressions on the roster, Dave Preston, as they made the initial cut down to 53?
Well, again, as Coach Ron Rivera said, this is far from over. I think it's, the batter is in the oven right now, and you have 2 weeks to let this thing cook. It's not like previous years where you'd make your cuts the Saturday after the preseason finale and you played in 7 days. You, in effect, have a bye week. You, in effect, have multiple practices to get guys up to speed. I think eventually things are going to shake out. They needed to keep extra tight ends because of the certain health of a few of the guys, not completely 100% with, what guys are able to do. Although I do dream of Scott Turner and his offensive genius sporting a 5 tight end formation on 1st and 10 against the Jaguars. That would definitely catch the Jags off guard, and I don't think they'd lose 21-20 if they lined up with 5. I can guarantee they wouldn't lose by 1 to the Jags if they lined up with 5 tight ends as their first down base offense.
They'd lose by 30.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
They'd find a way to lose by 30 on one play. I mean, with a formation like that.
I'm happy to see Jarrett Patterson come back, even albeit on the practice squad, just to send the message that guys who really bring it in August, yes, the preseason isn't everything. Yes, I do the hokey-jokey Babe Laufenberg trophy to whoever shines in games that don't actually count in the standings, but it's to see somebody like that play so well last year, and he actually played fairly well this year. Nobody on the team was awesome in August, let's be honest. To see his preseason play do get rewarded, that sends a message to the rest of the roster saying, you know what, even though these games don't mean anything, every play counts. And that should be the case. Every play in practice counts. Every rep counts. And if you get that established where if you make it count, you get rewarded, that helps out the locker room, and that helps the culture that we've been talking so much about over the last couple of years.
And to that point about culture, though, and this is an interesting thing that I was thinking about earlier. When Ron Rivera came in, he was quick to just kind of blow out most of the veteran guys that were there before, or at least started the process of trying to replace them. He went to a very young team over the course of those first couple of years. At some point, though, you got to have a veteran presence. You got to have leadership that, I don't know that Washington has a guy that is a veteran guy who's going to grab a guy by the face mask and say, you're screwing up. you need to be better, and is going to try to get the most out of, the players that are on that roster. And of course, that's up to the coaches as well. I get that, but you always need at least one guy on the roster who checks that box. That's why I keep beating the drum about Bobby Wagner. I thought that was a missed opportunity. That's a guy who could have been transformational for a defense that was talented last year. But I would make the case that if they would have had better leadership, maybe they don't regress as badly as they did in 2021. Anybody think I'm crazy?
Jonathan Allen is that guy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's the closest thing to it, but then he's throwing haymakers at his college and pro teammate on the sideline during a prime time game. So you know what I'm saying?
Maybe that's his leadership.
I mean, Terry,
that's true. If a man puts his finger in my face, I'm swinging too.
Terry McLaurin's a leader, but he's not. We don't think he's doing that. Carson Wentz is a quarterback. He just got here. I don't see that at his disposition. Kendall Fuller's another guy who's been through. He's won a ring. Like, he's a veteran guy. But Jonathan Allen's the closest you kind of see to that.
Yeah.
To your point.
But usually you have a guy who's kind of, the quote unquote quarterback of the defense, a guy who's playing linebacker or safety. And they had a couple of guys out there like a Wagner, like Honey Badger, who was out there. Those are guys that can be transformational. Yes, they're older. Yes, they're expensive. But, for year 3 of a program that's supposed to be making the next step up, I mean, that's supposed to be the cherry on top that gets you past Dallas and gets you past Philly in the division.
You got to get past the Giants too, I would think. No, I don't think
they're going to be a problem.
This is the NFL that we live in today, with the salary cap, where you're constantly looking to shed salaries in order to pay your top players as much as possible and keep them in the building. And it's unfortunate that the Burgundy and Gold are stuck in this thing where there was really nobody, for the most part, no veteran guy who was okay, a better leader than a player, that Ron Rivera wanted to keep when he took over. And instead of bringing somebody in from the outside, I get that you're trying to, build your roster. This is still not that good of a roster to begin with. It's almost, having a veteran leader is almost a luxury. And this is a team that has won 7 games in back-to-back years. So I think they're in a tough spot, Robbie.
Because they're not going to attract anybody, right?
They need to get in gear to be in the position. I mean, they're still missing ice cream and some caramel, let alone the cherry on top.
That makes me hungry because I haven't really had lunch yet. But
is it caramel or caramel? And what's the difference between?
It's definitely caramel.
What is the difference between caramel and butterscotch?
God, that's actually a great question.
We
should actually do a whole podcast on that. We should do that around Halloween. I'm going to give you one name that I think would be an interesting addition, because we were talking about linebacker. We were talking about a couple of spots, running back. What about the lack of depth in the secondary? I would add a guy like a Joe Hayden. He's a local guy. He's been a Pro Bowler. He's I'm trying to remember. I don't think he was on that roster, and Jay will know better being a Pittsburgh guy, but I don't think he was on the team when the Steelers were last in the Super Bowl back in 2010. But I think he might have been a rookie in Cleveland at that point. But he's been on some teams that have been relevant and that have mattered. And he's a guy that could, and I don't know if it's his leadership style or not, but that's a guy who would be a nice veteran presence in the locker room. Jay, you've seen him play quite a bit up in Pittsburgh.
I'm surprised that he's still on the street, as it were. There's a bunch of guys out there, but you know what? You said it before. There's still time, as Dave said. There's extra time, which a lot of people aren't happy about, but I think a lot of the coaching staff is like, good. Now we got a little bit extra time here. We're not as pressured to kind of put something together. I said before, week 1, it's sort of just like that 4th preseason game, if you think about it, because you don't know what you got. So you almost think about it, you got 3 weeks to kind of put something together before you start to sweat it out, like Ron Rivera is in year 3. So there you go.
Hey, I'll tell you one thing. You lose to Jacksonville week 1, you better start sweating. Okay.
You better be.
That I'm always right.
You better be sweating like Patrick Ewing in pregame warmups. That's what needs to happen if you lose to Jacksonville, and subsequently. Look, I'm telling you, the Detroit game too. Because I think, honestly, even though that's on the road, I think that one's
All right.
That's the more winnable of the two. If we're being honest, even though you're playing at home against Jacksonville. All right. So we have some time to mull over that Jacksonville game. Obviously that's
Not Jay.
as of this
Jay.
recording, it's like 2 weeks away, but
But Rob, before we move on,
yeah,
to your point, you guys, we mentioned Kendall Fuller earlier. There's a guy who he's old enough. He has a championship. He came back. He's making money. He's a guy who should be a leader. It reminds me of in the mid to late 80s. And this is obviously dating me, but Don Baylor was with the Red Sox. They traded him. Dwight Evans went into the general manager's office, said, "You can't trade him. Don Baylor's a great leader. He's a leader on this team." And the GM's like, "Dwight, you're 36 years old. At what point do you become the leader?" And I think Fuller is a guy who is at the age and experience where, yes, his play is important on the field, but he also has to bring it as a leader as well. He has to be accountable as a leader of the secondary, as a leader in that defensive side of the locker room.
Yeah, that's true. And briefly though, not everybody's wired that way. So I'm not close enough to the team to know whether he's kind of that guy. I mean, and I know this is different sports and it's not apples to apples, but I mean, this was the same thing with Scottie Pippen in Chicago after Jordan retired. Everybody was like, all right, well, now he's the man. Well, not everybody's wired to be the man, So, I mean, I like Kendall Fuller. I think he's a terrific player. I don't know if he can be the alpha on a defense. If he's my second corner, if he's my slot guy, I feel great about that. But if he's my number one, and I'm relying on him to, have the C on his chest, I don't know if he's that guy. But we have some time to figure that out. Again, we're closing in on about the 2-week mark until the season starts. But more imminently, college football. That gets Dave Preston's engine running, pun intended. So he's been doing some great previews on WTOP.com, just kind of getting everybody ready for all of the teams of local interest as we move into the first college football Saturday of the season. I think each of us should give a bold prediction for the coming season. I'm going to say Maryland's going to be bowl eligible in that Taulia Tagovailoa is going to end up putting his name in the conversation of the sort of that second tier of quarterbacks when he comes out in the NFL draft. So I don't know that that might be a little too bold. I mean, there's a cloud of smoke in here. I'll let you figure out what that is. But Dave Preston, what's some of the stuff that we're looking for here coming up in the 2022 season?
All right, Rob. First off, with Maryland, Taulia, the ceiling is there. He can have a great season. He broke the school record for passing yards last year. He tied the school record for touchdown passes in a season. And the key, though, for Maryland this year in the Big Ten, and Coach Mike Locksley has mentioned this early and often in the offseason. He mentioned it this past Tuesday when I was at the press conference. They have to be able to sustain the run in the Big Ten. They also have to be able to stop people. Last year, they gave up so many big plays, and there were so many breakdowns, whether it was a missed tackle here or a missed assignment there. They have to clean that up. Otherwise, they're going to be that cute team that goes 3-0 or maybe 4-0 in September, puts 50 points on SMU, scores 35 against Charlotte, puts 70 on Buffalo, but then gets smacked around by the likes of Wisconsin and Michigan. And this is a team that in previous years they went into Purdue and gave up 40. So it's not just the elite that they're having trouble against defensively; it's against the rank and file. They gave up 35 points to Indiana last season. That's Maryland. I think Virginia, new head coach Tony Elliott has a great quarterback coming back in Brennan Armstrong. Problem is he has no offensive line. 2 FBS starts amongst the guys coming back. So they have to be able to keep him upright, and they also have to run the football. Virginia ranked 14th last season in the ACC running the football. They were also 14th in the ACC in stopping the run. So that's what UVA has ahead of them. They play Richmond this Saturday. Virginia Tech has a new head coach in Brent Pry. He has a new quarterback, the transfer from Marshall. The focus for them is getting back to the basics. For years, Virginia Tech was that lunch pail, hard hat team. They didn't beat you by offense necessarily, but they got you with special teams and defense. I think under head coach Justin Fuente, the last 6 years, they were initially successful, but they got away from what made Thursday night games in Blacksburg nearly impossible to win at. And so I think that's the question they face. Can they get back to the basics and be the Virginia Tech of old, not to be confused with the smoked turkey legs that they have at Lane Stadium? Navy, last but not least, gentlemen, and we're not talking about James Madison yet, but Navy it looks to be as athletic and as quick as they've been in recent vintage under head coach Ken Niumatalolo. They also probably will not have to play 11 bowl eligible teams this year like they did last year. Last year's schedule was an absolute nightmare, and so things will be a lot softer for them, even though Delaware is no pushover. But Navy should be bowl eligible this year. I think there's a chance for all 4 area schools to be bowl eligible this year because of the way that there's enough talent at Maryland, Virginia Tech, and Navy. It's just a matter of guys making the right plays at the right time.
Man, 4 bowl eligible teams at one time, George.
I think so.
Hey,
you know what? After this past winter with college basketball, where everybody in the area sucked, I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, man, I'll take that. And I don't know that we're going to get some playoff football from the professional level this season. So, I mean, it would be great for the college teams to step up. George is a Terp. How do we feel about Maryland coming up this year?
I think, to Dave's point about going 4-0, you put 70 on Howard and then you go get spanked 40.
Oh, that felt real. That was real familiar.
Yeah. I think this year that you're going to see them, and it's sad you say the next step in their progression is, being competitive in the Big Ten or being whatever. I think though this year here's your bold prediction: either Michigan, Penn State, or Wisconsin. They're going to win one of those 3 on the road.
Okay. No, I would take that because look, I mean that's how you get to that next level. You got to knock off some of the big boys.
Baby steps.
There's a lot of big boys in the Big Ten, especially as they continue to get bigger and bigger. Jay Brooks, any bold predictions?
Loxley's been talking the talk, but we got to see if the team will walk the walk. Okay, yeah, no problem against Buffalo and Charlotte, great. But what do Maryland, Navy, Virginia Tech, and Virginia all have in common? They're not going to be in the college football playoffs when they matter. So I'm just looking ahead that it's going to be a frustrating year for the Terps once again, once they get into the Big Ten. I'm lightning on the field to get your results, but I just think that, and I'm leading towards this playoff system, is I'm picking Alabama already, okay, because that's where we are. Until we get that fixed, every effort that Dave Preston puts into this doesn't get the full amount that it should, because we don't have any of these teams talking about the college football national championship ever. We always complain about them airing 40 bowl games every year that nobody watches. So, yeah, I like watching them too. They're interesting. They're quirky names. But it's frustrating that this area doesn't have a horse running for the college football playoff. One little caveat that I saw about Alabama that I thought was interesting. Saban got his contract extension where he is making $29,000 a day, and it costs average $29,000 a year per student at Alabama. Just a quirky thing I'm throwing in there. So would I like to see the Terps win it all? Take the Big Ten, get a big bowl game? Great. I don't think it's going to happen again. I'd like to, but I'm not holding my breath.
All right. And perhaps not as frustrating as your Wi-Fi, my guy. I don't know what's going on there, man, but it's like are you okay? Can you hold up today's newspaper and just let me know that you're okay and that you're safe?
Can't you see me? Can't you hear me?
I mean, no, you're in and out, but we love you, Jay. But let's go to the run the hurry up here as we run out of time
Dave,
here.
Max Headroom Preston.
Yeah, right. Let's run the hurry up here, Jay. What's on your mind as we go into another wild week here in sports?
Well, it's kind of a sad story. It's the John Wall story that I just read about this morning about the the last 3 years have put all of our lives into a tailspin. It's ended things that we didn't want to have end. It's began some things that we didn't expect we would see. but here we are. And to read something about John Wall, who, when he was in DC, it was just like, man, this guy's got all the money, all the talent. And then the COVID hits. It hits his family. He gets injured. And then he starts thinking sideways thoughts that you shouldn't. He has brought at least his name to 988, to dial that if you're having any kind of thoughts. And I say that in this sports theater because it's very important that we all look up to athletes. For some reason or another, we take their word no matter what Charles Barkley says. Yes, they are role models. But when you find out that one of your role models was having some thoughts about doing something to themselves, it makes you pause for a second and kind of think, and think that you do have some help out there. So if you are thinking about something and it ain't sitting right, you call 988, you get the help and talk about it, because your life matters just as much as every professional athlete out there in the world.
And that's exactly what I said in my sportscast on Tuesday. I even had it in my overnight sportscast because that everybody needed to hear that John Wall soundbite. Yeah. And everybody needed to know that there is an easier way to get that help now that they streamlined the suicide hotline. It's 988 now. You know, it's pretty easy to remember, and you are stronger than you think. And that's what I said on air. You're stronger than you think. And I had some struggles during the last couple of years that I won't go into here, but I mean, it was challenging. It was challenging. And sometimes you do have those thoughts. And when you do, get help. Don't do anything permanent. And, you know, we have to sort of move on respectfully, though, as we try to get in George and Dave's thoughts as we wind down another DC Sports Huddle. Dave Preston, what are you thinking of coming up here this week?
Well, thinking of just the incredible story that is Joey Meneses, the overnight sensation after over a decade, not just playing in the minor leagues, but playing in Japan, playing in Mexican leagues as well, hitting 348 with 6 homers, 11 RBI in his first month in the big leagues. Those of us who, when I just would watch games on TV, it's like, oh, the worst player, he stinks. But just to get to the major league level, you have to be in the top 1% of your field. There are a lot of guys who are great players who don't get to the major leagues. And Joey Meneses was one of those guys who he showed promise. He had a lot of skill, but things just never worked out for him until this year. And during a season where the Nats are ridiculously under 500, they're going to be eliminated from the wild card race, perhaps by as early as Labor Day. It's nice to see somebody's hard work get rewarded. And if you're a fan, you can go out and catch them in a game and just see somebody not just dream the life, but live the dream. Joey Meneses is having a fantastic summer, a summer we all dream about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. George Wallace, you're the closer, buddy.
I'm going to enjoy the Serena run as long as it's still going. I mean, that was a pretty special night in round 1 the other day. She hasn't played round 2 yet. Hopefully it goes beyond that, but it was fun to watch the other night. And, you know, who knows? I like how she said, I've been kind of vague about the whole retirement thing. We'll see if that actually happens, but maybe she'll get a nice little week and a half run here at the U.S. Open. Everybody can enjoy it.
And I'll tell you briefly, the draw sets up well for her. As of this taping, she has yet to play her second round opponent, who's the 2 seed in the tournament, but she gets by that. I mean, a run to the semis and maybe even the final is not at all out of the question.
If she loses, George Wallace is the one who is jinxed her.
I will always give George credit for a jinx. Well, it's the DC Sports Huddle, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. It's sponsored by MGM National Harbor. It's time to change the game. Easy for me to say at MGM Sports. As a matter of fact, you know what? They've been good to us, so I'm just going to do that all over again. Sponsored by MGM National Harbor. It's time to change the game at BetMGM Sports. I am Rob Woodfork, trying to do it better next time. And actually, I'm going to go get outside like George Wallace and Dave Preston are right now. It's a beautiful day out on this Wednesday. Jay Brooks, live in a basement somewhere. He assures us that he is safe. We are going to take his word for it, and we'll hear if he's been safe when he's in on Sunday mornings on WTOP. For now, breaking the huddle. Break And
'Cause
also,
I'm holding